Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Rechak Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Jeremiah, the 51st chapter, Babylon judged for sins against Israel. And in Jeremiah 51, it's similar to Jeremiah 50 in that it's prophetic judgment pronounced against Babylon. Okay, and it's written in a way where it can be misleading if you don't understand or can't decipher prophecy. But similar to Jeremiah 50, Babylon here is in reference to America today. Okay, and the judgment that the Lord has set up for her. So this is Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 1. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, I will raise up against Babylon and against them that dwell in the midst of them, that rise up against me. Right. So Babylon, the Lord is going to raise up against Babylon nations, right, which would eventually come make war with her in this third world war. As it says, of them that rise up against me, referring to Babylon, a destroying wind. And the destroying wind represents the nuclear destruction or devastation that's going to level and make bare or empty this land. And I will send unto Babylon fanners that shall fan her and shall empty her land. So here it's like after the harvest, when you have chaff that's on the threshing floor, and you would have those that would like winnow or like blow, fan it to clear it. But in this sense, the Lord is going to have these nations that are going to clean up this land, right? Like fanning by way of their destruction, right? By shooting those missiles, which is going to burn and melt everything in this land. It's going to be like emptying the land. So as it says, for in the day of trouble, they shall be against her round about. So the day of trouble, meaning the day of the Lord's judgment, where this place gets destroyed, right? They're going to be against her round about, meaning it's going to be like they're going to surround her, right? Now, not necessarily literally per se, like that of an actual siege, but they're all going to have their targets mainly, right, set against this place, against Babylon. Verse 3, it says here, against him that bendeth, let the archer bend his bow. Against him that lifteth himself up in his brigandine, and spare ye not her young men, destroy ye utterly all her host. Now against him that bendeth, it's kind of like saying return, like him that bendeth, right, is one that shoots an arrow, right? If you look at this in a literal sense, it's an archer. But it's saying here against their archers, right? So against those that bend the bow, let the archer bend his bow. So against the archers of Babylon, let your archers basically shoot and target them. And against him that lifteth up himself in his brigandine, which is their armor. So against those that that think that they're going to be safe in their armor in actual war. The word is leaving me right now, but basically how good your armor was, right, played a big role also in war, not just in how much it could protect you, but how your mobility was affected, right, how agile you could be in the battlefield. So typically those that were of higher rank would have more better quality armor, right here, which is called brigandine. So as it says here, in other words, shoot at their archers, right? And those that are in that armor that feel like they're safe in there, take them out. Okay, now obviously the way this is going to happen, it's not going to be with like real archers, right, and real in that sense, but it's going to be with nations shooting their missiles, right? So just as the U.S. is going to shoot their missiles, or Babylon is going to shoot her missiles, here the command is return your fire right back on them. And spare ye not her young men, which are the military, destroy ye utterly all her host, right? So don't hold back, completely annihilate this place. And that's what's going to add to this being an even greater destruction. Thus the slain shall fall in the land of the Chaldeans, and they that are thrust through in her streets, right? So you have, and the way they're going to be thrust through is by the missiles, okay? Except you, instead of having dead bodies on this land, when those missiles fly, it's going to just be, they're going to be fuel for the fire. So it's just going to be a burning until there's nothing left. For Israel hath not been forsaken, nor Judah of his God, for the Lord of hosts, right? So here, of the Lord of hosts. So here the Lord is in the midst of this, still reminding Israel of his mercy, to say that even after all this, at this appointed time, at the end, because that's when this is going to be fulfilled, at the very end. But the Lord is mentioning that even still, he hasn't forsaken his people, though their land was filled with sin against the Holy One of Israel. So even though they had committed so many atrocities against the Lord and filled their land with sin and iniquity, the Lord still was faithful and has not forsaken his people. Flee out of the midst of Babylon and deliver every man his soul. So similar to Jeremiah 50, right? Fleeing out of the midst of Babylon. It's not necessarily, you trying to do that physically on your own, but rather by taking hold of the words of the Lord, right? And putting your faith in the Lord, he would deliver us physically out of this place by us being beamed up. And it's mentioned in Revelation, the 18th chapter, right? And that's how we would be delivered, as it says, deliver every man his soul and not be cut off in her iniquity. So we wouldn't perish along with this place when the fire comes. For this is the time of the Lord Yahweh's vengeance. He will render unto her a recompense. So the Lord is going to pay this place back. He's going to pay back Esau for the wickedness that they have done against his people, against him, against the planet. Babylon hath been a golden cup in the Lord's hand, that made all the earth drunken. And drunken with what? Not with actual wine, but with perverse ways, i.e. the influence that this place has spread throughout pretty much the four corners of the earth. The nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad. And when you go into that word mad, it goes into almost like crazed, behaving abnormally, right? It says to act madly, act like a madman, to make a fool of. And when you look at these nations, they weren't always like this, right? But now this modern, right, this modernized world, to where now you have like even OnlyFans, for example, in certain Eastern countries, right, where it would be unheard of, decades ago, right, where you have women being more promiscuous, basically adopting the ways, the perverseness that Babylon breeds. It's being spread throughout amongst these other nations. So Babylon has been like as a woman with a sexually transmitted disease that goes around spreading it. Verse 8, Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Howl for her, take balm for her pain, if so be she may be healed. Right. So the from the perspective really of those that are not watching, this place is going to go down like a sudden destruction. But for those that are watching, it's been a long time coming. But as it says, it is suddenly fallen and destroyed, meaning as this place falls, it's not going to get back up. Right? It's going to be destroyed. It's on its way out. Howl for her, take balm for her pain. Balm being like medicine that you would actually, if this was a physical person, you would actually use to ease the pain and to nurture or tend to the wound. But in the sense of on a nationalistic level, it's like taking measures to try and preserve or revive the nation, as they're saying, make America great again, right? As it says, if so be she may be healed, peradventure we can bring this place back, make it a great nation again. Nope. Verse 9, we would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. So if it were possible, I like the way it's worded. Yeah, I've been going to NLT a lot, but that's all right. We would have helped her if we could, but nothing can save her now. See? And that's going to be the realization very soon of not only the people that are dwelling here, right, but those that came here, like, because you have people of foreign countries that come here to Babylon, and they come here to make a profit, right? They get into these trade deals with this place and so on and so forth. But as the scriptures say, a lot of people are going to flee back to their own land, realizing that this place is no longer a place of profit or benefit anymore, but more so a dangerous and a destructive place. As people are really starting to see that now, America is being turned into a third world country before the eyes of the world, and it's starting to be undesirable. So as it says, forsake her and let us go every one into his own country. For her judgment reacheth unto heaven and is lifted up even to the skies. See, so they realize that, yeah, you can't save this place. It's on its way down. It's on its way out. And the judgment that the Lord is getting ready to bring here, there's no coming back from that. The Lord Yahweh hath brought forth our righteousness. Come and let us declare in Zion the work of the Lord our God. Make bright the arrows, gather the shields. The Lord Yahweh hath raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes. So who are the kings of the Medes? Let me actually go through these two in the NLT, right? It says, the Lord has vindicated us. Come, let us announce in Jerusalem everything the Lord Yahweh our God has done, right? And this is obviously from the perspective of Israel, right? Mainly from the remnant, okay? Because remember when we read up above in verse 5, it mentioned that the Lord had not forsaken us. So, it sort of goes in between when it talks about the deliverance and the mercy of the Lord upon his people. Then it goes into the judgment that he's bringing, but it's interwoven because that judgment is synonymous also with the delivering of the Lord's elect. Because by destroying this place, he's avenging, as he says, he is recompensing, right? Rendering her a recompense. That's avenging his people. So as it says, he has brought forth our righteousness, right? And proclaim justice for us. Come, let us declare in Zion the work of the Lord our God, and show forth how he has delivered us and brought down our enemies on our behalf. Then back to the judgment, right? Make bright the arrows, which are the missiles. Gather the shields. The Lord Yahweh hath raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes. And the kings of the Medes here is referring on to the Russians. Okay, not that of the ancient Medes. Because this is, as it says, for his device is against Babylon, right? Now, when you go back into the history, the Medes didn't go to war against Babylon. So as it says, so the Lord has raised up their spirit. This is also likened onto Ezekiel 38, when the Lord said that he would put hooks into the jaws of Gog and turn them back. Okay, that's stirring up their spirit and raising up that spirit for war. Because the Lord's plan, his device, his intention is against Babylon to destroy it. Because it is the vengeance of the Lord, the vengeance of his temple. See, so this is the wrath or the righteous indignation that the Lord has. And he's going to bring justice and order through this destruction upon Babylon. And after this place is taken out, along with this system, peace, true actual peace, will reign and righteousness will flourish in the earth again. Verse 12, set up the standard upon the walls of Babylon. Make the watch strong. Set up the watchmen. Prepare the ambushes. So this is like describing once again a scene of war, right? That of like a taking over of or about to be a takeover of this place or of Babylon. As it says, for the Lord Yahweh hath devised and done that which he spake against the inhabitants of Babylon. Just looking for an option here. I'm not sure if they have it in the web version, but I guess it's all right. So let's read this in another translation. It says, raise the battle flag against Babylon, reinforce the guard and station the watchmen, prepare an ambush, for the Lord Yahweh will fulfill all his plans against Babylon. So these are, once again, like war tactics, right? It's describing like an actual battle or actual war. And, we know how it's going to actually look when it manifests, right? When it actually manifests in real life, it's not going to be like that of a traditional war, like that of the ancient world, but it's going to be a different kind of war in this time. Okay. So it's more so when you like sort of read how it's worded, it's more so the intention of it. Because when all these actions are taken, what does it signify? It signifies an evil intention against who the target is, which is who? Babylon. Verse 13. O thou that dwellest upon many waters, abundant in treasures, thine end is come, and the measure of thy covetousness. See? And when you look, in fact, when you actually even look at the geographical location of this place, right, Babylon the Great, it is surrounded by waters. Okay. And also symbolically, when you read in Revelation 17, it describes the waters as peoples, nations, kindreds, and tongues, which this place has dominion over. Right? Abundant in treasures, even though most of them are ill-gotten gains, thine end is come. Right? The end of your reign, the end of your rule is upon you. And the measure of thy covetousness, right? Which is like saying the measure of your wickedness is at an end, or is fulfilled. The Lord Yahweh of hosts hath sworn by himself, because there was none higher, saying, surely I will fill thee with men as with caterpillars, and they shall lift up a shout against thee. So this is painting the picture of, imagine a nation being invaded, okay, by another, right? Which is like the invading army is so much, they're likened onto like caterpillars, right? Or I think this should actually even go into locusts. Usually when you see caterpillars, it might be, caterpillars or just referring to locusts. Right, so a young locust, early stage of development, caterpillar. So the scene, right, is that of an overwhelming invasion, as it says, and they shall lift up a shout against thee, to basically like a takeover of your land. Now we know that when the Lord, quote unquote, invades this place, right, how he actually judges it is mainly going to be with the missiles, with fire. Okay. And not necessarily which we'll see, but not necessarily that of like how you would have over there in the land of Israel or in the east, how they have like this ground operation and they're going into Gaza and taking land and so on. Really, the way that this place is going to be invaded, right, on a like a war scale, is going to be with the fire or the missiles. Verse 15. He hath made the earth by his power. This is dealing with the Most High. He hath established the world by his wisdom, and he hath stretched out the heaven by his understanding. I mean, and that's crazy in itself to even think about, right? Imagine that. The all in all, it's saying the Lord created everything, right, by his wisdom and his power. But in a poetic sense, to magnify the Lord even more. When he uttereth his voice, there is a multitude of waters in the heavens, meaning at his command, the waters that were in the heavens were created. And he causeth the vapors to ascend from the ends of the earth. Today is known as evaporation, right? Like as a part of the water cycle or something like that. Forgot the actual scientific term for it. But this is like the Lord forming the ordinances of the earth. He maketh lightnings with rain and bringeth forth the wind out of his treasures. So all these things that happen, right? Storms, lightnings, rain, the waters above and all of those things, they were all by the power of the Lord. Every man is brutish by his knowledge. Every founder is confounded by his graven image. Now let's look into this word knowledge here. And this is also in line, I believe it's in the New Testament, but there's a precept that mentions the wisdom of this world is foolishness with the Most High. Right, so okay, it just goes into knowledge, discernment, understanding. So in comparison to the Lord, or in the eyes of the Lord, man, right, as it says, is brutish by his knowledge, right? So by the knowledge of man, at best, you're like a brute before the Lord, right? And it says every founder is confounded by the graven image. And the word founder, I believe this goes into some stage of idol making. But let's see, let's find out. Right. It says to smelt, to refine, a goldsmith. So typically when they create those idols, right, because here they're clearly associated with idol making. But when they create those idols, the way they get them in gold is to plate it, right? Or cover it with that layer of gold or silver. So as it says, every founder is confounded by the graven image. Why? For his molten image is falsehood. So it's not real. They may attribute power to it, but it doesn't actually do anything. And there is no breath in them. They're not alive. They don't work. They don't cause anything to happen. So they're confounded because when they put their faith in an idol, a piece of wood, and then come time for them to depend on it and nothing happens, they realize the stupidity in believing that an actual lifeless piece of wood would deliver you. When as the Lord has emphasized many times over, it can't even deliver itself. They are vanity, meaning they are vain, the work of errors, right? They were built out of error, meaning people in error thinking that these are actual gods put them together and worship them. But what? In the time of their visitation, they shall perish. So they're all going to be destroyed along with their followers. The portion of Jacob is not like them. All right, meaning the portion of Jacob, which is the Most High, he's not like unto these idols. Okay, for he is the former of all things. The Lord wasn't created. He wasn't formed by the hands of man. And trusting in the Lord will not have you confounded. So Jeremiah is making a distinction here, right? To say that the Lord, the portion of Jacob, is unlike these idols. For he, unlike the idols, is the actual former of all things. He's the creator of everything. And Israel is the rod of his inheritance. The territory, the border, the portion of the Lord's inheritance is Israel. The Lord Yahweh of hosts is his name. Thou art my battle axe and weapons of war. And this is the Lord referring to Israel, right? That Israel is the Lord, because the Lord is a man of war, as the scriptures say, and he likens Israel onto his weapons of war. For with thee will I break in pieces the nations, and with thee will I destroy kingdoms. And this is getting ready to happen. And this is going to start with the Lord's elect, right? Who he's going to raise up and give power and use them, right, to conquer and gain that dominion back again on the face of the planet Earth, right? By breaking down and subjecting these nations. And that's why he likens Israel onto his battle axe and weapons of war. Verse 21, and with thee will I break in pieces the horse and his rider, and with thee will I break in pieces the chariot and his rider, right? And the horse, the rider, the nations, the kingdoms, this signifies all those that would fight against the Lord, right? The armies and weaponry of the heathen nations, they're all going to be broken down before the power of the Lord as he uses Israel to conquer and gain dominion over the earth. With thee also will I break in pieces man and woman, and with thee will I break in pieces old and young, and with thee will I break in pieces the young man and the maid. Okay, so the breaking in pieces, because people are not like glass that you physically, like you can break bones, but people are not glass that you like break in pieces, right? What it means is that, let me see if I can even find a better way that it's worded. Right, so here as it says, shatter, right? Old people and children, young men and maidens. But what it means is that we're going to completely, take over them. And it's going to be one of two ways, right? You're either going to get down or lay down. Because through the power of the Lord, that's what he's going to use us to do, to conquer, right? And to dominate. The scriptures say that the saints shall take the kingdom. So this is an example of taking that kingdom, okay, with force and with power and with might. And regardless of age or gender, you're either going to come under the order or you're going to be broken. Verse 23, I will also break in pieces with thee the shepherd and his flock, and with thee will I break in pieces the husbandman and his yoke of oxen. So this is describing You know how in Revelation it talks about both all, small and great, rich and poor, free and bond? This is describing everybody, right? From the shepherd to the young woman to the old woman, everybody, but in a lengthier way, right? With thee will I break in pieces or subject the husbandman and his yoke of oxen, which are the planters, right? The ones that break up the earth, and their oxen that they use to plow. And with thee will I break in pieces captains and rulers, and I will render unto Babylon and to all the inhabitants of Chaldea all their evil that they have done in Zion in your sight, saith the Lord Yahweh. So all the wickedness and atrocities that they have committed, the Lord is going to render judgment back upon them. All right, render that evil back upon them in our sight. Right, meaning where the Lord is going to deliver his elect. And when you go to like Revelation 15, it talks about that, right? How the elect are gonna witness, right, the destruction of upon this place, right, the destruction of Babylon by the hand of the Lord. Verse 25, behold, I am against thee, O destroying mountain. And that destroying mountain is another way of referring to Babylon. Okay, a mountain here signifying a government, right, or a body of rule, but they're likened unto a destroying mountain or also a hammer of the earth, because it's led by the man of perdition. So the Lord says, what? I'm against thee, saith the Lord, which destroys all the earth, and I will stretch out mine hand upon thee. And that's what they've done, even to this very day. You know, everything they put, any new thing they come out with, or anything that they try to enact, has side effects that are destructive. Medicine, food, dwelling places, technology, all of it. So the Lord said, what? I will stretch out my hand upon thee. So I'm going to take action against you and roll thee down from the rocks and will make thee a burnt mountain. So the Lord is going to like break them down, like as if he broke off the top of a mountain, and then it starts to like roll down. But as he says, I will make thee a burnt mountain. And how is he going to do that? Well, you don't get a burnt mountain without fire. So he's actually quite literally going to burn this place. And they shall take of thee it says, and they shall not take of thee a stone for a corner, nor a stone for foundations, but thou shalt be desolate forever, saith the Lord. So it's gonna be so destroyed you can't even find because typically if a place, a country is like broken down, for example, right, you may have rubble or remains, but here the Lord is saying you won't even be able to find a stone, all right, that can be used as a cornerstone, which also signifies to be able to build back, right, or rebuild this place. That's not going to happen, right? So within this place, once it's destroyed, you won't be able to find anything, any resources, or be able to build it back up, as it says, nor a stone for foundations, because it's going to be a desolation forever, saith the Lord. Set ye up a standard in the land, blow the trumpet among the nations. Prepare the nations against her, so prepare them for war. Call together against her the kingdoms of Ararat, Minni, and Ashkenaz. Appoint a captain against her. Cause the horses to come up as the rough caterpillars. So here is listing, nations, which I believe Ararat is over there in around either Turkey or Armenia, like around that region. Let me see if they use their modern names in some of these other translations. Okay, no, not really. All right, so we can let's look into the interlinear. But yeah, because I believe that's where, if I'm not mistaken, the ark landed. A mountainous region of eastern Armenia, right, between the river Araxes and the lakes Van and Orumaya, the site where Noah's Ark came to rest. Okay. What else what other location did it mention? Minni. Is that a region in Armenia? Okay. Which is all part of that country of the north, right? With the armies that they're going to come with. And appoint a captain. Okay, cool. So let's go back. And I think there was one more that was mentioned. Ararat, Ashkenaz. There we go. And typically, you know, when you hear Ashkenaz, you think of Ashkenazi Jew and all that, right? But as it says here, a descendant of Japheth, a northern people, perhaps Bithynia. So let me see if I look up here. Ashkenaz, not Ashkenazi, not Ashkenazah either. Oh Lord, I just want to look at the territory. Okay, so this is an ancient map. Maybe it'll show it on it. If we zoom in a bit more. I see Ararat over here. They have Togarma over here, Gomer, Ashkenaz. Okay, so they have it here looking like it's somewhere in Asia Minor. All right, I see some drawings on there. The world as known to the Hebrews. Oh, this is interesting here. So you know, basically it's nations from within this region area. And then today, the modern day, as you see Magog up here, today the modern day superpower around here is Russia, right? So they're going to come with all these armies. Like in Ezekiel 38, it mentions those of the North Quarter, right? It mentions Gomer and all of those. So these are going to be a part of the nations that the Lord is going to raise up in war against, on the opposing side, right? Against Babylon. Where we at? Right. It says here, appoint a captain against her, right? So one to come up against her, which Russia is going to play that role, right, of that guard or that head. Cause the horses to come up as the rough caterpillars, right? And this would signify their armies that would come against, come against her or join in war against her as the rough caterpillars. Now, when it mentions the caterpillars, it's mentioning that really to emphasize like innumerability, okay, meaning that they're going to be in mass. Verse 28, prepare against her the nations with the kings of the Medes, the captains thereof. Once again, the Medes in prophecy are referring to Russia. Okay, the captains thereof and all the rulers thereof and all the land of his dominion. So all they that are under the dominion or the lead or the guard of the modern day Medes, all right, or the prophetic Medes being Gog or Russia, all right, they're going to be prepared, as it says, to come against Babylon, right? And all the rulers thereof and all the land of his dominion. And the land shall tremble and sorrow, for every purpose of the Lord Yahweh shall be performed against Babylon. And what are his purpose? See, even before the missiles hit, the Lord has purposed plagues. He's purposed famines. He's purposed wars, civil wars, bloodshed within the land, widowhood, right? All of those things the Lord has purposed against this place to be culminated with fire. And it is going to happen. And that's why it says, tremble. Make the land of Babylon a desolation without an inhabitant. Completely wipe it clean. And if you've noticed, the bulk of Jeremiah 51 and even 50, it's really like a repeating to emphasize the same thing, right? Because it's really just saying the same thing in different ways again and again, right? About the nations being prepared, those that bend the bow, not sparing any arrows, how they're going to make this place desolate. And the reason the Lord emphasizes it again and again and again is because it's going to be a great devastation. It's a judgment that he has purposed. He has full intention on carrying out. Verse 30, the mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight. They have remained in their holds. Their might hath failed. So they've become afraid, right? Because one, before the face of war, obviously they're gonna be the Lord is gonna put a spirit of weakness upon them. But as we read in 2nd Ezra 13, it mentions, right, how they were afraid and yet durst fight. So they're gonna be afraid. The Lord is gonna put that spirit upon them, because in the ancient world, or let me say in the past, men of war were fierce. But today when you look, I mean, now they're trying to revert it, right, by like, trying to make their military harsher and stronger mentally. But for so long they had weakened their military and the might in their men of war, okay, by just allowing anybody in there, women, TGs, softies, all of those. Okay, so if you need people to defend your actual nation, you can't have people like that. They're gonna lose courage at the sound of just landing on the battlefield, right? Which is gonna be the case here, as it says, they have forborne to fight, right? Being afraid, their might have failed. They became as women, right? And what is the trait of a woman in this setting is to be in fear, not really to be courageous. That's not their nature. They have burned her dwelling places, her bars are broken. And who is it that burned her dwelling places? The adversaries, right? Those that surrounded her, that bent the bow. And how did they do it? With fire from their missiles. One post shall run to meet another, and one messenger to meet another, to shew the king of Babylon that his city is taken at one end. See? So they're gonna go sending messages, one message here, one memo here, one this here about, yo, this place has been hit, this is what's going on over here. It's just basically bad reports. And that the passages are stopped, and the reeds have been burned with fire, and the men of war are affrighted. Right now, once again, it's likening the visual of how war was, where like your entrances and your exits have been cut off. Okay, let me pull this up in another translation. Right, all the escape routes are blocked. The marshes have been set aflame. The army is in a panic. Okay, so this is what happens when you're in war, but now the tides are turning against you. Okay, and things are not going your way, and you're starting to get desperate. Right, this is like the setting or the visual of that. For thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, the daughter of Babylon is like a threshing floor. Right, so it's going to show you, it's talking about America. It is time to thresh her. Yet a little while, and the time of her harvest shall come. So this place is prepared, it's ready, like a threshing floor, where the harvest, right, the sheaves that are bound up and brought here are going to be threshed. So this is like the land of the threshing, which is symbolic of the judgment, because the way the Lord is going to thresh this place is going to be with fire. Verse 34, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, hath devoured me. He hath crushed me. He hath made me an empty vessel. He hath swallowed me up like a dragon. He hath filled his belly with my delicacies, or with my delicates. He hath cast me out. The violence done to me and to my flesh be upon Babylon. Shall the inhabitant of Zion say, and my blood upon the inhabitants of Chaldea shall Jerusalem say. Now, at this time, of course, when once again Jeremiah was receiving this vision, remember that you did have the actual ancient Babylonians that were in power, and yes, they did do all these things that it's written of in verse 34 and 30, or mainly 34, right? In terms of coming into the land, destroying it, taking out the vessels and so on and so forth, right? And basically consuming, when it says he has swallowed me up like a dragon, consuming Israel, right? To where we were helpless before them and serving themselves of us. And as it says, the violence done to me and to my flesh be upon Babylon, as in the cries that were made by Israel, okay, against Babylon for these atrocities that they committed against them, shall the inhabitant of Zion say, and my blood upon the inhabitants of Chaldea shall Jerusalem say, which is like a cry for vengeance or revenge upon them, right? And then going into verse 36, we'll come back to 34 and 35. But as it says, therefore thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, I will plead thy cause and take vengeance for thee, and I will dry up her sea and make her springs dry. So yes, the Lord did, or in the ancient time, this did happen, but the main part of this, right, is the let me say the repeat of it. Okay, in that this happened again, except the Nebuchadnezzar of this time was not, the ancient Nebuchadnezzar, right? The Nebuchadnezzar of this time is Esau, Edom. Okay, so though it's worded using the ancient, men in the ancient times, which that did happen, that also signified what we would go through again in this time, having the same reaction and the same actions. Because in verse 36, when the Lord said that he would avenge us, the way he is described that he would avenge the cries of his people is not what he actually did to ancient Babylon. Okay. And when you look at the cause of the judgment that the Lord brought by the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, it wasn't done in an unrighteous sense, right? The Lord brought that as judgment or punishment for Israel's wicked deeds. Okay. However, as it says here, the cries of Israel were still heard of the Lord back then, but also now. Okay, so when the Lord says here in verse 36 that he's going to avenge or take that vengeance and plead the cause of Israel, the Babylon that he's going to take that vengeance upon wasn't ancient Babylon. Okay, it's actually modern day Babylon, because they're also guilty of doing the same thing as what Nebuchadnezzar did in the past. Except they're the ones that the Lord is going to actually require our blood at their hands. So verse 36, it says, "Therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, I will plead thy cause and take vengeance for thee, and I will dry up her sea and make her springs dry," right? Which is, in the literal sense, a drought or lack of water, but it symbolizes the Lord taking action or bringing judgment upon them in the sense of bringing retribution or avenging his people. And this is the key right here, right? "And Babylon shall become heaps, a dwelling place for dragons, an astonishment and an hissing without an inhabitant." See, so how did the Lord avenge Israel over ancient Babylon, when the way he said he would do it in these verses here is not what actually happened to the Neo-Babylonian Empire? Okay, so dealing with verse 34 and 35, yes, this is something that actually happened historically, okay, but the vengeance that the Lord is going to take for us wouldn't be upon the actual ancient Babylonian Empire, okay, but rather on the modern Babylonian Empire, all right, or the modern day Babylon, which is America, which also committed the same, if not worse, atrocities against us. So continuing in verse 37 again, right, when it says, "And Babylon shall become heaps," this is going to be obviously by way of it. Heaps are like ruins, right, or destruction. So how is this place going to become heaps? By way of that thermonuclear destruction that is going to burn everything on here. The scriptures tell you it's going to be the day that burns as an oven, right? That shall neither leave root nor branch. And these quote unquote dragons that dwell here, or desert-like creatures, are going to be those that eventually make their way in here after this place is after the fire is burnt out. And there's going to be an astonishment and an hissing without an inhabitant. So nobody's going to dwell in this place again. "They shall roar together like lions. They shall yell as lions' whelps. In their heat I will make their feasts, and I will make them drunken, that they may rejoice and sleep a perpetual sleep, and not wake, saith the Lord." And the Lord here is using, like a poetic speech, okay, to describe what he's going to do to Babylon, right? So it says here, "Let her people roar together like strong lions. They will growl like lion cubs. And while they lie inflamed with all their wine, I will prepare a different kind of feast for them. I will make them drink until they fall asleep, and they will never wake up again, says the Lord." So basically, having committed all these atrocities, they will continue to live and, basically live it up as though they're going to be good, except in feasting, right? Not expecting the judgment of the Lord to come upon them. The Lord is saying, yeah, let them feast, but the feast that I'm going to have them feasting is going to be one to where they get so consumed, right? They get so drunk and rejoice so much, and then they fall and they don't wake back up again. Okay? So basically, in their rejoicing, the Lord is going to bring judgment from which they will not rise back up. Verse 40, I will bring them down like lambs to the slaughter, like rams with he-goats that are like basically like lambs that are about to be sacrificed. That's how Babylon is going to be. How is Shishak taken? How is the praise of the whole earth surprised? And we go into the word here for Shishak, as it says, another name for Babylon, apparently taken from the goddess Shak. So once again, repeating the same kind of sentiment, right? Like, how has this place that was known as this great place, actually fallen? That was once a praise of the earth, right? Once desired, the place to be. How is it? Let's look up the word surprised. It says here, right, okay, so take hold of, right? So to be taken or captured, which would symbolize it basically becoming a prey onto another. Or in other words, how is it fallen from its former glory? How has Babylon become an astonishment amongst the nations? Like almost unbelievable. You would think this place would be a place that would never go down. And that's why when we prophesy about the downfall of this place, people look at it like it's crazy, like it'll never happen. Like it can never happen. The sea has come up upon Babylon. She is covered with the multitude of the waves thereof, which symbolizes, an overwhelming judgment. But also on a literal level, you're going to have like the tsunamis and the waters that are actually going to be, flooding certain areas and certain cities and so on. But ultimately, it's the Lord is likening his judgment onto like completely consuming or covering Babylon with an overwhelming force. Right, as it says, she is covered with the multitude of the waves thereof. Her cities are a desolation, a dry land and a wilderness, a land wherein no man dwelleth. Neither doth any son of man pass thereby. Right, because it's completely destroyed and void of inhabitant. I will punish Bel in Babylon, and I will bring forth, which is their idols, and I will bring forth out of his mouth that which he hath swallowed up, and the nations shall not flow together any more unto him. Right? So, well, let me finish the verse first. Yea, the wall of Babylon shall fall, which represents their defenses. Their defenses are going to be broken into, and everything that they had taken, right, going into their riches and all, is going to be brought back up. As it says, and make him vomit up all that he hath eaten. Right? So all the which mainly it's like the riches and the gains and all of those, the Lord is going to have it brought back up, right? And that's why he mentioned that he would make Esau bear, right, in their destruction. So they're going to lose everything, right? They're going to lose the power, they're going to lose the status, they're going to lose the actual dominion. Okay? And as it says, the nations shall not flow together onto it anymore. So this place is not going to be looked at as like a hub, right? A world superpower where nations look to to try and either make trade deals with or try and come to this place. No longer is it going to be looked at as such. Yea, the wall of Babylon shall fall. My people, go ye out of the midst of her, and deliver ye every man his soul from the fierce anger of the Lord. Right. So once again, how are we going to go from the midst of Babylon? One, not by buying plane tickets, right, but by first detaching from this place spiritually, which would lead to the Lord physically getting us out of this place, right? And that's how we deliver every man his soul from the anger of the Lord, because you can't escape the anger of the Lord by by physically trying to run away, right? Jonah tried it, and we all see how that turned out for him. Verse 46, and lest your heart faint, and ye fear for the rumor that shall be heard in the land. A rumor shall both come 1 year, and after that in another year shall come a rumor, and violence in the land against ruler against ruler, meaning, and this is describing like the downfall of Babylon, right? As it says, lest your heart faint, meaning hey, yo, get down, what you doing? Hearing the reports, right, of the chaos that's ensuing in here, as it mentions the rumor that is heard in the land, coming 1 year, and then shall both come 1 year, and after that in another year, right? So year by year, basically things getting worse and worse. Year shall come a rumor. Slacky, my cat is out here being unruly. Shall come a rumor and violence in the land, ruler against ruler, right? That division and that chaos, which we're even seeing that now, right? So as things get progressively worse, those rumors or those reports, right? Whether it's, it's like news clips or like articles or whatnot, those are like the messages of what's going on in the land, along with that division, right? Going into that ruler against ruler, which the Lord mentioned. It's even in 2nd Ezra 15. Therefore, behold, the days come that I will do judgment upon the graven images of Babylon, and her whole land shall be confounded, and her slain shall fall in the midst of her. Right? So the time is coming when the Lord is going to bring judgment, as he says, upon their graven images, their idols. So he's going to break it down, which goes into their false beliefs, right? The different false religions and stuff that people follow. The Lord is going to confound all of that, right, by destroying it. It says here, and her whole land shall be confounded, as the Lord has said many times, right? He's going to have this land completely destroyed, and all her slain shall fall in the midst of her. So they won't be able to escape, right? And the way they're going to fall in the midst of her is by being burned. Then the heaven and the earth and all that is therein shall sing for Babylon, not singing like, for behalf of Babylon, but rejoicing at the downfall of Babylon. For the spoiler shall come unto her from the north, saith the Lord, which are the nations, once again, that the Lord is going to raise up, Russia included, to fight against this place. As Babylon hath caused the slain of Israel to fall, so at Babylon shall fall the slain of all the earth. See, because the Lord is going to turn this place into a lake of fire, right, or a place of judgment, i.e. the second death, which would be a recompense, right, for the judgment that, or for the evil that they have done to us, right, to the Lord's people. As it says here, ye have escaped the sword, or ye that have escaped the sword, go away and stand not still. Remember the Lord Yahweh afar off, and let Jerusalem come into your mind. So those that the Lord had mercy on to escape, when it here, once again, the visual is like, imagine the city being taken and destroyed and you escape. If you physically, right, if you escape, you try to go as far away from the destruction as possible. But here, the manifestation of those that escape the sword or this judgment, being those that the Lord delivers out of this land, they're going to be, as it says, taken away or go away, but they're going to be actually taken up, right, into the chariots. And as it says, stand not still, remember the Lord afar off, right? And that's going to be like that scene in Revelation 15, where they I think it says they sing the song of Moses, or, something along those lines. Right, so it says here, Slakia, let me gather my thoughts again. This cat is distracting me over here. Right, it says here, remember the Lord afar off, and let Jerusalem come into your mind. And that's going to be the case. That's going to be the case, right, when the Lord delivers his elect, because we're going to be singing that praise, to the Lord, and remembering, right, being put back in full remembrance of Jerusalem, of the Lord, and rejoicing at the downfall of this place. Verse 51, we are confounded because we have heard reproach. Shame hath covered our faces, for strangers are come into the sanctuaries of the Lord's house. Wherefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord Yahweh, that I will do judgment upon her graven images, and through all her land the wounded shall groan. Right. So here, when it's going into the that you pulled up here, read it in another wording, right? We are ashamed, the people say, we are insulted and disgraced because the Lord's temple has been defiled by foreigners, right? So remember, it mentioned about the Lord causing the slain of Israel to fall, right? So the reason, right, the foreigners here would be what? The Babylon, right? And here, the temple that they're defiling, when you go obviously into the future, they did that. Yeah, physically, they did that with the siege of Jerusalem. They destroyed the actual temple. They defiled it, even during the time of Antiochus. But the temple that they have, the spiritual temple, right? I should say, because the scriptures refer to Israel as your body being the temple of the Lord, right? So spiritually, by defiling the people of the Lord, that's also like them defiling the temple, okay, or the sanctuaries of the Lord's house, okay, and so as a result of that, let me read it again. We are confounded because we have heard reproach. Shame hath covered our faces, for strangers are come into the sanctuaries of the Lord's house. Okay, in manifestation of them taking over us, taking over our land, defiling our land and our people. Wherefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord Yahweh, that I will do judgment upon her graven images, right? I will bring that judgment upon her graven images, her idols, and through all her land the wounded shall groan, right? And this is referring here to Babylon. And they're going to groan for what? For the calamities that are going to come upon them. Though Babylon should mount up to heaven, and though she should fortify the height of her strength, yet from me shall spoilers come on to her, saith the Lord. So though they exalt themselves up, right, both physically with their satellites and so on, their weapons over there that they're setting up, but also in pride, right, in being lofty and arrogant, the Lord is going to what? Send spoilers onto her, which is raising up these nations that would destroy her. A sound of a cry cometh from Babylon, and great destruction from the land of the Chaldeans. Why? Because they're being destroyed. Because the Lord of hosts hath spoiled Babylon, and destroyed out of her the great voice. When her waves do roar like great waters, a noise of their voice is uttered. Now read this in the NLT. As it says, for the Lord Yahweh is destroying Babylon. He will silence her loud voice. Waves of enemies pound against her. The noise of battle rings through the city. Okay, and sometimes it is a bit easier in the NLT or in some of these more modern translations, because sometimes the clarity isn't really in, like, say like a dark saying, but just how the Old English is worded. So continuing in verse 56, because the spoilers are come upon her, even upon Babylon, and her mighty men are taken, every one of their bows is broken. For the Lord Yahweh God of recompenses shall surely requite, which is to pay back, right? So the Lord has caused, as it says, the spoilers to come upon her. Once again, these nations shooting their missiles, destroying this place, to where her mighty men, her armies, her defenses, the nuclear missile defenses, all of those things are failed. Okay, as it says, every one of their bows is broken. Why? Because the Lord is recompensing judgment upon them. And I will make drunk her princes and her wise men, her captains and her rulers and her mighty men, and they shall sleep a perpetual sleep and shall not awake. And that drunk is not with like literal wine, but it's to say like the Lord is going to consume them as strong drink does a man, to the point where they're not going to rise back up. Okay, saith the King, which is the Most High, whose name is the Lord of hosts Yahweh. So, don't get tripped up in the wording of it, because you already understand what it means, right? We know what the Lord is referring to when he says this. He's just saying it in a dark way, or in a poetic form, or in a metaphorical sense. Verse 58, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the broad walls of Babylon shall be utterly broken, right, her defenses, and her high gates shall be burned with fire from the missiles, and the people shall labor in vain, and the folk in the fire, and they shall be weary. Yeah, so all the work, everything that's being done here is all in vain, right? Everything that they're laboring for is all in vain because it's all going to be destroyed. The word which Jeremiah the prophet commanded Seraiah, the son of Neriah, the son of Maaseiah, when he went with Zedekiah the king of Judah into Babylon in the 4th year of his reign, and this Seraiah was a quiet prince. Now let's look up Seraiah. I'm wondering if this is Baruch, but let's see. Okay, it says here, Yahweh is ruler, scribe, secretary of David. Let's see. Okay, son of Meriah, and messenger sent by Jeremiah. Okay, so maybe it's just somebody else. Verse 60, so Jeremiah wrote in a book all the evil that should come upon Babylon, even all these words that are written against Babylon. And Jeremiah said to Seraiah, when thou comest to Babylon, and shalt see, and shalt read all these words, then shalt thou say, O Lord Yahweh, thou hast spoken against this place to cut it off, that none shall remain in it, neither man nor beast, but that it shall be desolate forever. And see, they thought, right? And this is why, like Apostle R would say that, as he has mentioned before, that we know more than they did in the past, because they thought that this was referring to ancient Babylon. And that's why Jeremiah said this, right? But not realizing that this was actually a future prophecy for Babylon the Great. And it shall be, when thou hast made an end of reading this book, that thou shalt bind a stone to it and cast it into the midst of the Euphrates. And thou shalt say, thus shall Babylon sink, and shall not rise from the evil that I will bring upon her. And they shall be weary. Thus far are the words of Jeremiah. And I know it was a lengthy chapter, but, in summation, not to get tripped up on the verbiage of it, but in summation, this is going into the destruction of Babylon the Great, which is America. So with that, Lord willing, this is edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha, Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.